Two worlds. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Well, it shouldn't be big news to you that Christians are being pushed from the marketplace and from the public square in a division of our country, which today I'm calling Two Worlds, and we'll look at the Christian economic aspects of that pushing and of that division in America. Last call. Well, in his recent book, Os Guinness writes about this division in America. His book is called The Last Call for Liberty. And his point is that we are at our last call. We must come together. We cannot remain divided as we are. He compares the French Revolution in 1789 to the U.S. Revolution in 1776. And he talks about how division can't be sustained the way America is now dividing. I'm tempted to delve into this subject, which I have called When There Isn't a Fight, Start One. It's about competition and collaboration and how sometimes we compete and sometimes we collaborate. But I'm going to withdraw from that subject today and try to stay on the topic of what happens in Christian economics when our world becomes divided and we have two different worldviews, as we clearly do today. Dinesh D'Souza says you can have a multi-ethnic society, but you can't have a multicultural society. That's because we have to decide on which side of the road are we going to drive. Dinesh D'Souza is correct. Another one of my favorite authors is Dennis Prager. He said the three values of America can be found in your pocket on a coin. Liberty, in God we trust, and e pluribus unum. Well, as Dennis Prager says, we are losing e pluribus unum. As a Christian economist, what do we do when we are no longer e pluribus unum? Education. Well, our education world is being divided. Some children go to private school, some go to public school. Christians have been pushed from the public square in this regard. I'm going to quote a pretty good article in the Wall Street Journal recently by Bjorn Bartning. It's in March 5 Wall Street Journal. It's titled, Dividing by Race Comes to Grade School. The subtitle is, Students age 5 through 12 are urged to check each other's words and actions and become committed activists. Quote, after confirming that the curriculum obtained by a nonprofit called Pollyanna was, quote, one of many resources the school was using, I became concerned by the emphasis on grievance over gratitude. That's an interesting phrase. Grievance over gratitude, and by the stated goal of turning young children into committed activists. By the end of the unit, one section of the curriculum explains, students will set commitments for rectifying social ills, such as learning and planning how to carry out anti-racist activism and or social advocacies in their community. Children were encouraged to, quote, check each other's words and actions to be sure they were aligned with the school norms. I'll stop quoting Mr. Barting right now, but after expressing his concerns to the headmaster sent him a letter saying, maybe this is not the right place for your family. It's hard to stay together when we have such philosophical differences. It is these philosophical differences that is tearing our world apart. One of our 7 grandchildren is homeschooled. She was pulled from school for many of the reasons that you could complete as well, and she's doing well at home. The other 6 are in public school. What is the call? How should we as Christians be in the world, but not of the world, as we're seeing it divided the way it is being divided today? My students at Dallas Baptist University often talk about living in the DBU bubble. Well, in what's going on in the world today and the way Christians are being pushed from the public square, I often praise our DBU bubble. But should children attend, and these are adults by the way as well, should they attend a Christian school or should they go in public school? How are we in the world, but not of the world? During a recent basketball game at my university, we prayed, and God bless the students from a state university who were our opponents that day. They stood respectfully. But as our athletic director prayed, I wondered, how much longer will we be able to do this? When is the government going to stop us from praying before our basketball games? President Biden, in the first week in office, signed an executive order ordering that biological men could play on women's athletic teams. A U.S. Olympic women's track coach, her comment was, finished, done. That's the effect on women's sports. And so the next day I talked to my class about, what are we going to do? Will we set our own sports league? See, here's what's happening. We have our own churches. We will have our own sports leagues, our own websites, our own publications. We will not be in the world because we can't be of the world. But there is a solution. Stay tuned for a few minutes. In a recent example of book burning, The book When Harry Became Sally was discontinued by Amazon because the book takes a negative view of sex change. And so they're no longer selling the book. In the same week, the very good video that I highly recommend called Created Equal, the Clarence Thomas story, was discontinued by Amazon during Black History Month. Look, it is a wonderful rags to riches story that could only happen in America. Clarence Thomas is an amazing story and I highly recommend it, but you can't get it now because Amazon has discontinued it. So Ben Shapiro, just the next day, said on the radio, we need to start our own bookstore. Yes, Ben, we have to have our own bookstore, as we have to have every element in society as Christians get pushed out. As we get pushed out, how do we respond? In the world, but not of the world. 1 John 2:15 says, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. See, a few years ago, my wife Ginger came home with a story of a woman who was kicked out of a health club because their theme is no judgments. She had reported that a man was in the women's locker room. They kicked her out for judging the man. Okay, if she or her husband shows up at a church board meeting the next week, what do you think they're going to suggest? They're going to suggest their own health club. And then we have our own bookstores, we have our own health club, we have our own movies, we have our own church, we have our own schools. This is how we're dividing. What's the economic effect? And that's what I want to talk about in just a few minutes. But we are being divided. We're being pushed from the public square as Christians. In his daily blog, Jim Dennison recently wrote about Bethany Christian Services. It's the largest Christian adoption agency in the United States. This week, the organization announced that it would begin providing its services to LGBTQ parents nationwide. Their decision is in response to requirements from various states that agencies serve such couples to maintain their governmental contracts. This tragic announcement provides 3 points from Dennison. Number 1, government intrusion on religious liberty is escalating. Number 2, our culture and civilization are at stake. Number 3, we need to support ministries who stay faithful to their mission. Jim Dennison is saying in his blog, we must separate. We must have separate adoption agencies, those that are Christian and those that are secular. The economic effect, we will have a different industry for everything. I mean, think about it this way. My pillow will become the Christian pillow, and there will be secular pillows. Major League Baseball painted BLM, Black Lives Matter, on the pitcher's mound last summer. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. So they will be the secular Marxist league, and there will have to be a Christian, different kind of a league that has a free market capitalist orientation. Do you see how we're splitting? Let me quote Abraham Lincoln in his Lyceum address. All the forces of Europe and Asia combined could not by force take a drink from the Ohio or make a track on the Blue Ridge. If we are to be destroyed, we will be destroyed from within by suicide. Abraham Lincoln was right. And his prediction that he made in 1860 is coming true in 2021. But there is an answer, there is a solution, there is a way to be in the world, but not of the world. I'm sorry, I wish I could see the country coming back together, but I don't. This is because the difference is rooted in worldview. Where you end has a lot to do with where you start. Or you could say it the other way. Where you start has a lot to do with where you end up. It is clear to me that this division in America is based in worldview. Creation, fall, redemption. Something I've talked about many times in my other podcasts. If you have a different assumption for the world, you will end up at a different place. Will the Christian worldview command and will it take over the country? I'm sorry, I don't think so. The more I read the scriptures, the more it seems to me we are told that we are supposed to be persecuted. We have not been persecuted during my lifetime. It's been very popular to be a Christian, especially where I live in Dallas, which is considered the buckle of the Bible Belt. But that's going away. And so how will we survive economically in a more secular environment where we're persecuted? The solution. Okay, I finally have an answer for you. Sorry you had to wait so long, but I think it's worth it. Some years ago I did some study on this, and there's 2 men who we can look back at and try to model our lives after them in 2021. The first is William Wilberforce. William Wilberforce was the cause for the United Kingdom outlawing slavery 30 years before we did in the United States. How did he do this? Now, listen, William Wilberforce is a fascinating individual. How did he do it? He lived in a community called the Clapham sect. Actually, if you're in London these days, there's still a Clapham tube stop on the way out to Wimbledon. Clapham was a community where he lived and where he retreated every night to find out who was he, to study the Bible, to have dinner with his friends, to anchor himself. That's how William Wilberforce was able to be in the world, but not of the world. Retreating to the Clapham sect every night allowed him the next day to go into Parliament and change the laws so that slavery was outlawed in the United Kingdom. Now, Economist, this is an interesting little tidbit. Adam Smith had dinner with William Wilberforce. Now, if you're a teacher watching this, I just gave you the best assignment you're ever going to have. Tell your students to write a one-act play about the conversation that took place at the Clapham sect between Adam Smith and William Wilberforce. Think about it. The man who set the world on the path to end poverty, Adam Smith, had dinner with the man who set the world on the track to end slavery, William Wilberforce. What did they talk about? I bet they talked about freedom a lot. Listen, this is one of my most popular moves in class, and students recognize it. The intersection of Christianity and economics is freedom. It is. That's where it crosses. God wants us to be free. William Wilberforce freed the world from slavery. Adam Smith freed the world from poverty. We're not there yet, but we're really close. That's how we live in the world, but not of the world. Well, my second hero is more of a book than a hero. The book is called The Benedict Option, and it's by Rod Dreher. Rod Dreher is a very good Christian author who talks about how we behave in the world, but not of the world. Now, he takes some more extreme stances than I would. He says that you should not allow your children to go to public school. Okay, Rod Dreher, I'm reading your book, I'm listening. But he makes this really interesting point. Pope Benedict came to Rome in the year 500. He found it to be essentially a current day edition of Sodom and Gomorrah. So what did he do? When his culture was splitting, what did he do? He retreated to a cave about 40 miles from Rome and spent 3 years there building a monastic order, which we now call the Benedictine order in the Catholic Church. There's some good study to be done, but you know what? He did the same thing that William Wilberforce did. He retreated from society, gained his strength, and then went back. He didn't leave forever. And William Wilberforce didn't leave forever. And we should not leave forever. The solution is to find a close-knit group of Christians whom you study the Bible with, from whom you gain your strength, and then you can go back to the public square. Two worlds. How do we live in the world but not of the world? I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist, where our slogan is, fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time.